Welcome to ETalk.TV. I'm here with Brad Olsen. I'm your host, Jeff Furnell, and I want to thank you for coming in and surprising me with this interview and everything and coming into town like this.
Well, it's a great opportunity to be on ETalk and talk about all things ET, and we shall have a good discussion because my book, Future Esoteric, primarily has the ET material in there.
Okay.
There is also in Modern Esoteric too. And last time I was on Consciousness Rising, we kind of did double duty on both books, so I suppose we can do that again today.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about esoterics today,
Sure.
For sure, because it's the hidden secrets, the hidden knowledge, basically, is the term for esoterics, correct?
That's right. That which has been withheld by a small community of adherents. It started out with the mystery schools back in the time of the ancient Greeks and Egyptians. Occasionally there would be overlap, or adepts, as those who are studying under one of the masters, will eventually graduate up through the process. And all the while, just as there are 33 levels of Masonry, you have different levels in esoteric traditions. And one is not meant to know it all right away. You have to work towards it. You have to build up to learning many of these subjects. If you're in one of these mystery schools of old, or today we have secret societies and other hidden groups of people that collect information and knowledge and use it in a philosophical construct, sometimes even a religious construct. And once you get to those higher levels, then you are opened up to many of the secrets. But the age we live in today is the great unveiling, when many of these secrets are being revealed and people for the very first time have the ability to look at some of these top level subjects without having to go through the rigors of a lifetime of training as an adept. So that's what I find very interesting, and what I put into my books is many of these secrets that have been hidden from us, but also the alternative narrative about what's really going on in the world, because we know that the mass media is bought and paid for by corporate owners who want to control the narrative. So on the back of Future Esoteric, an alternative narrative gives an idea that these are subjects that also play into a different way to look at the world, one that we haven't been taught in our schools, and one that has not been fully revealed by the government or mass media. So that's what I've been working on for about the last decade. And glad to be back here with you, Jeff, and thanks for having us in Las Vegas. We're always fun to come here and see you and talk about cool stuff.
Well, I'm always happy to have you here. I mean, you are an amazing person. I just have so much fun with you. You got great energy. So with the esoteric knowledge, then, so what I'm hearing from you now then is it's not only secret knowledge about, I would say, spirituality and stuff like that, but also you're talking about what's going on behind the scenes, what the one percenters or the deep states or whatever are trying to manipulate the population.
Yeah, and give us their dose of what they think we should believe in and their view of reality. And when you look deeper into many of these subjects, and it could talk about energy, even into free energy that's been suppressed. We could talk about what happened after World War II and some of the high-tech devices and craft that the Germans were working on that may have been shepherded off to Antarctica, where I'm heading down to in a couple months, and South America in 2 weeks, and on a quest to find answers to some of these questions. Not saying that it's going to all come together in South America or in Antarctica to fulfill my curiosity, but this is really the whole world and all the people that have been basically blackballed from knowing this stuff. And now in this period of the Great Awakening, when the veil is being lifted, we can see that many subjects have been hidden from humanity. So happy to try to articulate some of those interesting ones as they perhaps pertain to ET Talk.
Yeah. Well, actually, what's funny is like I finally got you on ET Talk to talk, ET, but I want to go more into the esoterics and the spiritual aspect of that.
Sure.
What you've been studying and everything, what kind of knowledge are they holding back from the public, and what kind of spiritual stuff that would be an advantage to us knowing, and why would they keep it from us?
That's a great question, and as it pertains to benevolent extraterrestrials, it is a form of spirituality that I believe is universal, that humans should be able to tap right into. But because it is so powerful, in so much that it would make us as people so powerful to learn all this, there has been active suppression to keep us from knowing it or practicing it or mastering it. Because once you master it, the magician's trick has been revealed, and you can no longer pull the wool over people's eyes. At that point, learning this material becomes your power in a way. It's almost like if you wanted to become a black belt in karate. You can't just go to the studio and say, here's a lot of money, give me that black belt. It doesn't work that way. You have to work and you have to train, and it takes months and years, even decades, to be really good, to become a master. But once you do that, it becomes your power. And just as learning many of these subjects is a form of mastery, that too becomes your power. And you can't go back once you open the proverbial Pandora's box.
Yes. Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's been my life search, ever since I can remember. I was born into this where it's just like, I wanted to find out what I am, Are we like Jesus? Can we do the things that was shown to us? I'm the light, I'm the way. I love that saying. And I do believe as spiritual beings that we can master some amazing stuff that we're unaware of at this time. And that's my goal, is to try to understand that, the best I can before, I exit this planet. But no, I find it fascinating, and I agree with you. There's some amazing information out there that, if people understood it, it changes your life forever, and you can't go back.
Right.
You wouldn't want to go back, because you would learn how to love yourself unconditionally, and when you're in that spot, you never want to go back into the darkness.
Of course.
Unless there's something you missed that you need to learn.
But going back is the great deception anyways, and you realize what a fallacy that was, and why would you ever want to go back to that? So all you can do is continue to go up. And as it has been occurring to me as I study and learn about this stuff, there's always a next level. It just keeps going on and on and on. In our lifetime, I think the Buddha, I have a great book, by the way, called The Parallel Quotes and Teachings of Jesus and Buddha, and you would be absolutely stunned how similar they were in the same quest for knowledge and to pass it on. And in the teachings of the Buddha, the goal is to achieve enlightenment. And he did it in such a way, and I believe Jesus did in many ways too, of making it available to people. And saying, you can do this too. I did it. I'm the awakened one. I'm nothing more than that. I'm still a human being, and I just was able to do it, and I want to tell you how to do it. So in many ways, Buddhism has a very strong esoteric tradition. If we were to use that as an example, a young boy, usually pre-puberty, will start his training as a monk, and many of them will become monks for their entire life. And in the end, they can become a lama, a very highly ascended master. And usually along that process, they're also working on themselves, working on self-mastery, working on becoming enlightened. And this, I believe, when you have a community such as a monastery where everybody is chanting and meditating and bringing in the best energy for themselves in the group, you have a form of group enlightenment. And that's what we want to see happen on the earth. That's why we want to spread this far and wide. And if we can have this light bulb moment called the 100th monkey effect, the metrics I understand it to be is only 10% of the human race has to be awakened enough that everybody else just gets it. It could be this sweeping moment, which was in this study of monkeys south of Japan, near Okinawa. They were watching some monkeys on an island wash their potato. Well, it started with one. He showed it to its tribal members. They realized that it was so much more tasty to eat it without dirt on it, so everybody started doing it, taking it down to the river. Well, that's observable, teachable traits that they saw. But what was so amazing about it is that the next island over, all of a sudden they just started doing it. There was no interaction between monkeys or anyone to teach the other island how to do it. They just started doing it. So that's the great hope for humanity at this period of the Great Awakening, after the Great Unveiling. I think that it's a two-step process. One has to occur first, and that is what we're understanding with much of this subject matter and this new alternative narrative, that we can start stitching all this stuff together and in turn come out with a grand unified theory of much of the workings of the world. And when we do that, then we can unleash free energy technology, we can unleash a new form of spirituality. Maybe we'll be doing this interview telepathically 10 years from now. So many things that could come of this that just really encourage me that the human race is about to have this light bulb moment.
I agree 100%. I mean, there's been such a huge change since 2012. I mean, such a huge change, and even before that. And you say, can't wait for 10 years, and I agree with you. It's so exciting to see how big of a change we've had in the last 10 years easily, especially since 2012 till now. It's just, I can't imagine what it'll be like in 10, 20 years from now, what it's going to be like. And it's changed. I remember I went deep sea fishing with a bunch of my friends and stuff. I'd say, what was this? Maybe 2008 something, and I had Drambolo's book, The Flower of Life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, check this out. And a couple of them like entertained me. One, he was very religious, and so he basically, whatever, just get it out of my face, and they weren't very receptive at all. But all of them except the one that's still religious, and God bless them, more power to them and everything. So went almost everyone that I went on that fishing trip, except for the one that's still in the religion and stuff, are now open to it. Watch Ancient Aliens all the time. We're like, Jeff, did you hear about this? It's like, oh yeah, a long time ago. But
great example about how people are slowly, at their own pace, coming into this information and starting to understand it at their own pace.
Yeah, and I like, and what people, I believe they misunderstood with the Mayans and stuff. They never said it was the end of the world, just the end of the world as we know it. And I agree. I think as we see, there's been a huge change already. I think when we look back 100 years from now on this date, we're going to go, oh my God, they were spot on again. But so back to this esoteric knowledge. So you're talking the Egyptians and the Greeks and all of them. They were even hogging this information and not really sharing it with the populace?
That's correct. But they would look at it more of an initiation. That they only wanted people to join them who were really hungry for it. If you're not into it and you're just one of those students who's playing games in the back of the room in class, well, that's about as far as you're going to go. So they wanted to see that people were properly attuned first, then they could become an adept, and then they would move up the different ranks until they started to really understand. What I love in history is how sometimes there's a merging of high cultures, and in this case, different Greeks would go to Egypt for the initiation. One of the most famous and well recorded was the writer Herodotus, and he's actually considered the first travel writer. He did a guide on how to travel from ancient Greece to Egypt by boat. You just sail right across the Mediterranean Sea southeast, or you could take the overland route. And at first, Herodotus didn't think that the initiation process was anything special, that he could just go in and, hey, I've been working with the great philosophers of our culture, surely I can understand what you guys are talking about. And they said, no, it doesn't work that way. And they put him on a very special diet, made mostly fasting, and for 40 days had to be in solitude and meditation. It was only after that period did they say, okay, now we can begin. And he wrote in his journal, I absolutely had to go through that because I had to go through the inner journey first before I would become receptive to the outer teachings that was presented to me. And he spoke very highly of going through the steps. There are no shortcuts when you go into some of these deeper realms. Now, some people can say with psychedelics you can use that as a shortcut, and perhaps that's true. That wasn't available to Herodotus and the ancient Egyptian. Well, maybe another form, but I think the natural way, and the Buddha always said it too, that you don't need anything except to follow these steps and the right way of living, correct living. And by just leading yourself along a healthy path, body, mind, and spirit, with a dose of exercise to keep everything functioning properly, which also adds to your mental ability. Even a hard day at work, you can get that kind of reward. Will help with the whole process of understanding. It's not just a book thing, it's a physical thing, and it's a meditative thing. It really is the triad of body, mind, and spirit to fully attain some of these higher teachings and abilities.
Yeah, I agree fully just on what I've tried to learn in life myself. I mean, you need to go in first before you really learn what's out there. How to really treat other people as well too. I mean, the more I learn to love myself, the more I learn to love others and stuff.
Correct.
So yeah, I agree fully on what you were just saying. So I want to hear more about Hermedes.
Herodotus.
Herodotus,
his travels.
Yeah.
I could look up his quote. Go ahead.
So where did it kind of get to where it was more of a negative thing then, and people were hoarding this knowledge and not sharing it with other people?
Well, when it became useful in a way to control people, and this knowledge can control people, that's the thing. That's why I have sacred geometry and sacred symbols in the control section of this book, because it's so absolutely essential that people understand this can be used against you. That's why things like subliminal advertising are so effective, because they can get into your mind without you knowing, and simple-minded people can actually be influenced by it. I actually did I was a marketing major and an art major. I was going to get into advertising out of college, and I did my thesis paper about subliminal advertising and finding that there really is something to it. If you are suggestible to a certain kind of whiskey, perhaps, you may be responsive to an ad that has very subtly airbrushed the words sex in an ice cube in a glass. This was in a book called Subliminal Seduction that I reference quite a bit in the paper I wrote. But if I'm not a whiskey drinker, it's not going to work. But it could be like, if I'm on the fence, hey, maybe I will get that Cutty Sark tonight, without knowing that I've been influenced subliminally, and that's the important thing. So to just give you another insight into the Greeks moving to Egypt for their teachings, along with Herodotus, many other prominent Greeks made the journey to Egypt in antiquity, some even in their elder years, as some of these most famous philosophers that we've heard of. Besides being considered an ancient repository of knowledge, traveling to Egypt was a rite of passage. Solon was a famous statesman, lawmaker, lyric poet, and even credited with having laid the foundations for Athenian democracy. The Greek travel writer named Pausanias listed Solon among the 7 sages of the ancient world. After he had finished reforming the country, Solon traveled abroad with his first stop at Egypt. There he visited Heliopolis, where he discussed philosophy with Panopeus, an Egyptian expert on the subject. Subsequently, at Sais, he visited Neith's temple and received from the priests there an account of the history of Atlantis. Solon wrote out in the history as a poem, to which Plato subsequently made references in his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. So it is from ancient Egyptian mystery schools where we learn the legacy of Atlantis. And it could even be argued that much of this knowledge that the Greeks attained from the Egyptians is the legacy of Atlantis through the ancient Egyptians. And it's very interesting in Egypt, Jeff, you find the highest culture is also the oldest culture. You find that the best made pyramids are the oldest pyramids. And this is called the Osirian Empire. And it is at a time when the culture of Atlantis survived through the earliest culture of Egypt. So then you have this intermeshing of the survivors of Atlantis influencing the oldest Egyptian cultures. And it's actually on the Narmer palette, which also features giants. King Narmer himself is like this 20-foot giant disciplining an underling on one side of the palette. On the other side of the palette was the beginning of the dynasties of the pharaohs in Egypt, which you could say was this repository of knowledge that came all the way to us from Atlantis through the Egyptians and then influenced the ancient Greeks, which were the precursor to Western culture in Europe and now America and around the world. So Pythagoras was the father of geometry and also one of the greatest philosophers of ancient Greece. It is said too that when Pythagoras went to Egypt with a letter of introduction written by Polycrates, he made the journey with some Egyptian sailors who believed that a god had taken passage on their ship. Knowing how prominent Pythagoras would be, perhaps understanding his karma or reading his energy is the way I interpret that. Arriving in Egypt, Pythagoras tried to gain entry into the mystery schools of that country. So once again, one of the greatest philosophers being denied because you have to go through the steps. He was applied again and again, but was told that unless he goes through a particular training of fasting and breathing, he would not be allowed to enter the school. Pythagoras is reported to have said, quote, "I have come for knowledge, not any sort of discipline," end quote. So he's a little bit cocky, saying, "I'm here to talk philosophy, bitches. I know this stuff better than you." And they're saying, "We don't care." But the school authorities said, quote, "We cannot give you knowledge unless you are different. And really, we are not interested in knowledge at all. We are interested in actual experience. No knowledge is knowledge unless it is lived and experienced. So you will have to go on a 40-day fast, continuously breathing in a certain manner, with a certain awareness on certain points," end quote. After 40 days of fasting and breathing, aware and attentive, he was allowed to enter the school at Diosopolis. It is reported that Pythagoras said, quote, "You are not allowing Pythagoras in. I am a different man. I am reborn. You were right and I was wrong, because then my whole standpoint was intellectual. Through this purification, my center of being has changed. Before this training, I could only understand through the intellect, through the head. Now I can feel. Now truth is not a concept to me, but a life," end quote. Saying that he knew after doing it how important the triad was. He was coming in just mind, just intellect, just as a philosopher saying, "Teach me, I'm ready to learn." They're saying, "No, you don't know anything about body or spirit in the way we do that we can teach you." And that's why it's important for people to be open-minded about this and understand that it's not just being book smart. It's also being body smart, as we were saying with keeping yourself healthy, but also spiritually smart. And that can be attained through meditation and other practices, or in the case of Pythagoras, through breathing exercises and also through a regimen of fasting. Once again, a period of 40 days. And we know that Jesus went into the desert for 40 days in a similar type of fasting scenario where he was going to become even a more powerful master by going through this. So in some ways, I'm really sad to see that the initiation process that has been alive for so many years, and well, in the East you'll still see it in monasteries and many of their cultures, but here in the West, we've kind of lost that. And Emily and I were traveling in Canada this last summer, and I took her to Dreamer's Rock, another book I did called Sacred Places North America, has this as one of my top sites that hardly anybody knows about, and it's just amazing. And what the Native Americans would do is very similar to this. They would send their adolescent children to a sacred Native American place. In this case, it was the Ojibwe people of the Lake Huron area, and they would live not too far away, so it was a young kid who's probably been by Dreamer's Rock many times and knew that that's where he would go on his or her initiation. And they would go up there and basically have to forage their food, find a way to feed themselves, but they were specifically instructed that they would have to have a vision. And maybe that was unknown to them. They wouldn't know what a vision was, they wouldn't know what that means until they had it. And they were really not allowed to come back until they did. But when they did, it was very profound. And they would go back to the elders and they would have a ceremony and discuss the circumstances of that vision. And then they would get a name for their adult life because that's who they were. And it was only because they went on this initiation that they became the real body, mind, and spirit that they would be for the rest of their lives. That they became the adept at that point. And then they can start learning from the shaman in their tribe, learning the ways of their elders to teach them how they could pass that tradition on. And that's what we've lost in the West. We've lost that initiation process. It's so individually interpersonal of you going on a vision quest and of me and our fellow friends coming together and understanding what that was that you had and then giving you this name that would help you on your process. And I think that's very clearly parallel to what Pythagoras and Herodotus and others did when they went on their vision quest to ancient Egypt to attain this knowledge that harkens all the way back to Atlantis. And now we're finally rediscovering it. So this is what I mean about the veil being lifted. Now we can finally see what has been withheld from us for so long and maybe start to rediscover that. Maybe start to go back to ceremony. I know a lot of people do go to sweat lodges and men's circles and retreats of various kinds to try to regain this knowledge that's been lost, but it's always been there for us to rediscover.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends that do that, and they come back with a lot of amazing visions and stories and stuff. Sometimes you're like, okay, but I'm open to it. We were discussing last night. I think if this is an energetic place, then anything's possible.
Yeah.
To me, and so I'm open to hear what people have to say and where it's at, and I think anything's possible. What I'm amazed too is, do you have an opinion on how you feel a lot of this information got to so many different cultures? Because we can see how it got to Greece and so on from there, but you're talking Native Americans now. So did the Native Americans get an influence from them somehow over the years, or
something else?
Yes.
That's a great question, and as it would not seem possible that these cultures could be interrelated, as in ancient Egyptians or Native Americans, maybe several centuries later, I would like to think back to Taoism, which simply means the way, and the great teacher Lao Tzu, who spoke of the way, but speaking of it in such a way that it's very intuitive. You know the way when you feel it, as the Greeks felt when they had to go through the initiation training. And Lao Tzu was famous to say that he who speaks the loudest about the Tao knows nothing about it. He who knows everything about it doesn't speak of it. So what that suggests is this is an inner journey. This is inner training. And once you attain that level of power, much like becoming a black belt in karate, as I explained, then it becomes your personal power. And if you are on this path of enlightenment, which is also shedding the ego and looking beyond yourself and becoming in service to others, you don't need to brag about it. You wouldn't want to brag about it. You don't have to brag about it. It's not bragging, but it could be teaching. It could be bringing others into the fold, but only if they're very receptive and only want to hear it. And then the Tao becomes available. But he who says, I know everything about that, I don't have to go to that training, waste my time, they're the ones who don't know. And the ones who do know will only open up when you prove yourself to be one who is worthy, who is there for the training and the teachings. And these secret teachings, well, Manly P. Hall came out with his whole thick 600-page book called The Doctrine of the Secret Teachings, and it's all about this stuff. You could go through centuries of mystery schools and secret societies, read this book by Manly P. Hall and some of his other works, and get such a big picture out of what it was that has been kept from humanity for so long and what is attainable. The trick in this modern age is people like their sound bites and everything else in quick little clips. How do you condense all of that, the tomes of books and centuries of knowledge, into these quick sound bites? It is possible. Of course, you lose a lot when you do it that way, but to help people get interested in this subject, maybe this is the way we have to present this on ETalk here today.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Get the knowledge however you can out there, and then see how people morph from there into, discipline or whatever.
Sure.
So, you were talking about the, I was going to call it the Tao, but the Taos.
Yeah, the Tao.
Tao, okay. So, but back to the Indians and stuff like that and getting that knowledge. Did I miss something, or did we go to a different...
Oh, no, you're right. And I had to feel that come around the circle with that. What I think is the Tao, we'll just call it that, is the truth, is the way. Tao means the way. Anybody can tap into this, whether they're indigenous people, uncontacted tribes in the Amazon, to people who have quested for this knowledge. The way is the truth. And the truth is like a pillar that stands tall through time. You can mask it, you can attach things to it, you can talk circles around it, but you know what? It still stands true. And you're not going to ever break that down or take it away. So I think the indigenous peoples could tap into that and could interpret the Tao in their own way. And they did do that. And if you study indigenous cultures, you'll see the practices of shaman and the ceremonies that they developed. And we still follow many Native American ceremonies. Certainly we want to tap into that when we go to South America and find some reputable shaman and hopefully do ceremony with them and take away that knowledge and just build ourselves body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, and what I like about that is you're talking about tapping back in, and that was back at the beginning of what we started with the show on the collective conscious, and when this information starts to get collected within that consciousness enough that, yes, everybody starts to get downloaded with that information that they're tapping into as Native Americans.
Yeah. Truly.
Yeah, to me, that's what I've been seeing too in my studies. I think, yes, once that information's in the collective conscious, it starts to download into the people that are ready to receive that information and move forward. But yeah, it's fascinating. And the Native Americans, to me, I have a big draw towards them. I just find them fascinating. I wish I could go with you to the event this weekend so we can head out to Chaco Canyon and stuff. You're going to speak this weekend at the conference?
Stargate to the Cosmos conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It'll be at the Midtown Ramada, just downtown Albuquerque, easy to find. 4-day event, 90 speakers.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of great minds from around the country and even some from around the world. Emily and I will have a table. She has these beautiful sacred geometry tapestries. I'll have my books there to sign, and I'm speaking on Thursday and Friday and panel moderator Saturday and Sunday, and then there's other functions and events that we're going to take part of. Emily Infinity is going to have her chroma harp and perform with Reverend John Polk,
Oh, awesome.
mutual friend of
Awesome,
ours, who
yes.
is one of the MCs of the event too, and it's an all-star lineup. Maybe you can find a way to come on out and join us.
I might do that, yeah, because there's some interesting people there I'd love to see. What topics are you going to be speaking on there then?
So I'm finishing my 2018 lecture series about the forbidden archaeology of giants in our ancient history, and also the deceptions in the world today. These are two lectures I developed in 2017 and 2018, Contacting the Desert, 5D events, and several others, traveling around and doing these. But I need to get some new material, some fresh material, so part of the reason I'm going to South America and Antarctica is so I will have new material for my lecture series in 2019 and 2020 if we get to the good stuff.
Beautiful. So that's good too, because now you said the deception. Well, let's go back to the deception in the esoteric knowledge that we were talking about at the beginning. Can you tap into a little bit of that and explain what's going on with that and what you've been seeing?
Right. Well, the reason it has been hoarded, for lack of a better term, that is the information and knowledge passed on from our ancestors, is for reasons of control, of controlling the masses with it. Weak minds would not understand how they're being manipulated when some of this can be applied. So I think it got corrupted probably around the time of Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati of the 17th century. They're still around, maybe of a different name, but it's the same mindset, and it's this generational need to feel they need to control the rest of us with hoarding this knowledge. So unfortunately, it's taken a bit of a negative turn towards the collection of knowledge and information and symbols and so forth for the use of a select few who wish to remain in control. Now, the way they do it today is more through the mass media, which they own, the news corps, which they own, and influencing people on a mass level, which they can do through Hollywood, television, radio, and even the internet. And that's why they imbue symbolism so frequently into many of the programs they wish us to watch. So they can subtly program us, once again, subliminal programming through these means, and all the while not really telling us that this is real. Why do you think all the superhero movies show humans with these incredible abilities? But supposedly it's just a comic book. It's just make-believe fictional stories. But isn't it amazing that many of these superheroes are telepathic? Many have these qualities that we hear that extraterrestrials, benevolent ETs that are very human-like, also attain. So you see, it's hidden in plain sight. It's veiled right in front of us in the form of mass media, but they're not saying this is something real or that you can do. They're just saying, hey, be entertained by it. Let us play out this whole script of free will that we're showing you what we're up to. We're showing you how to do it, but your free will has to figure out that it's actually real and how to go through the course to attain it yourself. We're just going to give you this fluffy, fun superhero picture to watch for 2 hours, and with a villain and a hero, and we know the story, Joseph Campbell's journey of the hero, and how so predictable these Hollywood scripts have become because they follow the same plot line. And if you look a little deeper, then you'll find the symbolism, and you'll find the hidden in plain sight abilities that some have obtained. And these are just ways that they can do it in so much to say, hey, we're giving the people a little bit, but if they don't seek it out, then their free will is not going to do that. I guess
you want to hear something funny on what
Sure.
you're talking about there, and it's about laughter actually. In Hollywood, and so because I was a trained actor for 10 years and stuff with one of the top acting coaches, Gerald Gordon. He's amazing.
Cool.
But he was when he was teaching us, he says all of this is in timing, you know, And so comedy's done in rhythm. A lot of things are done in threes.
Uh-huh.
But comedy is done in threes. And you'll sit there and laugh and you go, why am I laughing? That wasn't even funny. But the way they set it up, they all set it up in threes, so we are trained to laugh at that time. And so it's amazing. But yeah, what you're talking about programming there, so, you know, just in case our audience members are going, how do they train us or program us? That's a perfect example right there.
Yeah.
And after he told me, I catch myself all the time, you know.
There you go, and it's a formula, and it's a way that scripts are written, and there's an approval process. Why do some movies get made and why do some not? Some of the best movies we could potentially ever have never get made because there are gatekeepers and keymasters out there that can urinate. So one of the great things about the internet, it is helping to facilitate the Great Awakening, because now we can become directors, producers, actors, spokespeople, and put it out there. We haven't had this ability 20 years ago, or at any time in the modern age have we been able to become the broadcasters ourselves. So that's what's really helping speed up the process, I think, because you have people who can be very articulate and help people understand in these shorter sound bites. And if it catches on and people want to learn more, then they can seek that out. So that's why I do these subjects in my book, is to give people a sampling of all that's out there. Say somebody is very, very interested in levitation. They'll read an excerpt, a page or two in my book. And if they want to go into it deeper, you can then read Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi. He has a whole chapter on a master that could levitate. And if you want to go further than that, then you can find books or training or teaching and understand that this is part of these superhuman abilities that humans have. Maybe latent abilities that we just haven't tapped into. But now we're starting to understand that we can get back into this, and we can learn the ways of the ancients and use it to better our lives in this modern age.
Yeah, yeah. We can talk about some of the psychic abilities or whatever that we, remote viewing.
Yep.
The Army uses that quite, it's documented in there. Matter of fact, I got some files in my other office there that, since the Freedom Act or whatever, where they opened up all those files, I downloaded some stuff on some of their programs that they used remote viewing. You talked telepathy before. I mean, I believe all of these things are possible within us. Levitating and stuff, I don't see why not. It's just understanding how to change your molecular structure, I would think.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is how it's done.
Yeah.
But you have to be at a high state already to tap into that. And some people, the indigo children, some are becoming born into these abilities, probably because they were a master in the past life and they're remembering what they learned. That's the other thing about this human dilemma we find ourselves in, is that most of us come into this world with a swiped memory. Sometimes children will have little glimpses of it. It's really amazing to see. If only they could be articulate and say exactly what they're trying to say or they feel. And then it seems when you become an adolescent, you just get caught up in the world and believe in this other narrative that we're being told is our reality and start to forget about a lot of this stuff. It's said that of the ET races, they'll be reborn with all the memories of their past lives, that they're not hindered in this way as us humans of having a clean slated memory swipe. And this kind of goes into more ET talk material, and that is, why is that so?
I was just going to ask you that. Why do you think that?
Well, that there are devices, even a satellite called the Dark Knight satellite that was up there the very first time Sputnik went up there, and they're seeing other things. And there is this grid, there is a control grid around the world that souls are attached to, or the whole proverbial go to the light. My understanding, that's a trap. You go to the light, your memory gets swiped, you're reborn again. The Buddhists say in 49 days. That's not a lot of time to have a period of life review, a period of perhaps I know for myself, when I die, there's a lot of things I want to do. I want to go underground the Great Pyramids. There's a whole bunch of chambers there. I wasn't allowed access in this physical body, so I want to either astral travel there or go visit it as a spirit. I have an itinerary of things I want to do when I leave this body. I don't want to come back right away. I'm not even sure I want to come back to Earth, because this is a prison planet in many ways. And unless you start to grok these subjects and really try to train yourself to understand it, almost everybody just has to come back, because we have lessons to learn in this lifetime. And if you don't learn it, you're back.
Is it more of a prison, or is this a learning ground?
It's both. It's Earth School and it's prison planet. It's prison planet for those who forget their purpose in life, maybe get caught up in all the materialistic trappings, or even worse, don't even have the opportunity, that are just born into a terribly poor country and just have to eke out a living, let alone try to train or practice or learn in these ways that we've been speaking of in a way to better themselves. They don't even have the opportunity because they're so poor.
Yeah.
And that is the Earth dilemma, and that's part of Prison Planet too, is, for example, if you commit suicide, you didn't learn your life lesson, you cut yourself short of doing that. So you're guaranteed fast track back into a body, but with much less favorable circumstances than we had just being born in the West. You may have to become a starving Somali child to learn the gift of life, to really grasp how important it is, even under the most inhospitable circumstances, eking out a living, how important it is that you do what you're supposed to do in this lifetime. So I'm trying to get it right. I think you're trying to get it right. We're all trying our best, if we are seeking, if we are searching for the answers, to better ourselves. And when you better yourself and you better others and you can radiate outward, I think that's what we all end up trying to do.
Yeah.
Is make this a world where we can be in service to others, not just service to self and have a huge ego and think that because we get to a certain level, and those are the trappings of acquiring this knowledge. And I think that's where the Illuminati went off on the dark side. They did attain much of that and said, hey, you know what? We can use this to manipulate everybody else. Let's do it. And they've been quite successful in doing that. And also by the ability to print our money, to control us through money, this debt slavery system that's been established. It's actually quite brilliant if you think about it, how many people fall into that trap and never get out.
Oh yeah, I see it all the time.
Right here in Las Vegas. Lost wages.
You know, I used to work with a guy who could lose his whole paycheck before he got home on a Friday. And it's just like, how does he even have a wife and stuff after that? And he had a wife and kids, and over again he would lose his paycheck
Through gambling?
before he'd even get home with it. It's like, man, unbelievable.
Yeah.
But that's life. I don't know, if this is a prison world, I'm having a great time. I you know, now I'm starting to have a great time.
Well, you're in Earth School then, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You can still have a great time in Earth School too.
And that's the way I look at it. It's, you know, it's a learning ground. It's always learning. And I would say if there's any secret out there, it's love.
There you go.
You know?
That's what it is.
Yeah. It's you know, all about loving yourself and learning, just love what you're learning.
Forget the question, the answer is love.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it
Hey,
is.
I know you've had a busy schedule. You've been on the road a long hours yesterday and everything, so I don't want to hold you up anymore. I wanted you to go out, have a good time here in Vegas, enjoy yourself. I thank you so much for giving me this time with you. I hope I get to sit down with you again soon, because as we're talking, there's so much more I'd love to ask you. There's so much more. I mean, you had the Vegas shooting here last year, and so many other things that we could go back into deception, and I would love to with you, because there's so many, I want to say exciting things. I mean, it might look negative, but to me it's exciting, because what's happening, what experience are we going into next? So I definitely want to thank you, and when you get back from your travels, I definitely would like to sit down with you again soon, and I guess I'll see you in Vegas here soon too.
Sounds great, Jeff.
All right, man. Thank you so much. This is Brad Olsen, researcher, author, world traveler, the man. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.